Chris Bennett. He's not a parent. He's not an educator. Chris is, I think, a little different in our lineup here because he is an entrepreneur who is helping educators and parents to create small, in-home educational opportunities and what he's calling micro schools, which could be one of the, I think, solutions to moving forward when we still have concerns about the pandemic and everything else. I think you're going to find him incredibly charming. I sure did. He's a smart guy, and he has if you run your own program or you have your own in-home program or you aspire to start your own preschool or child care coming out of this, Chris is somebody you're going to want to listen to. He gives a lot of great advice about things like marketing, things like working with parents, and all these other things that are sort of the nitty-gritty of our business that have maybe less to do with the children because, he acknowledges we're the experts with the kids. But what he's trying to do is offer you and everyone this opportunity to have the business skills that we might need because, most of us didn't learn a lot of business when we were going to school, getting our degrees to work with young children. So I think this is going to be a real eye-opener for a lot of people, and I think you're really going to enjoy spending a little time with Chris and Sally.
Hey, welcome back to the Play First Summit, and I am super excited to introduce you to Chris Bennett, who is the founder of, and I love this, Wonder School, whose mission is to ensure every child has access to early childhood education that helps them realize their potential. The Wonder School platform empowers, I love this, experienced educators and childcare providers to run their own in-home business while providing a much needed service to other families in their community. It's like that is a fierce and amazing mission. So I'm really intrigued and curious about your own story. Like, how did you end up in early childhood? And, I want to know a little bit about your story and how this all came about.
Well, Sally, thank you for the introduction. It's really exciting to connect with all of you here today. So my story, it's pretty weird, I think, when it comes to early childhood education, because I'm not a parent. I'm not a former teacher or anything along the lines. My journey started from a really young age. So I'm from Miami, Florida, originally. My parents are immigrants from Honduras. And growing up, I benefited from high quality early childhood education. So I went to lab school at the local community college when I was 2. And that experience, at the time, I didn't realize how important it was. I was, a baby. But that propelled me to do really well academically thereafter. So I did really well in elementary school, in middle school, in high school. I always did really well. And I thought it was just sort of like this innate ability. I thought it just came to me because of genetics. I don't know. But in reality, yeah, right? You think it just, I don't know, happens. It's just me, exactly. But after doing a good amount of research and talking to folks in the early childhood education community, I learned that that experience at that preschool likely played a pretty incredible amount of impact on my life. And so, fast forward a couple of years, I went to Wharton. I graduated first in my family to go to college. I moved to San Francisco because some of my friends, were living out here, and they thought that I should come out here because this is where entrepreneurs, sort of play. And I kept hearing from my friends that they couldn't find childcare. And I thought it was really weird because I didn't know childcare was hard to find. And you would think that something so important would be pretty, plentiful. And I started doing research. And then again, I thought back to my childhood. And I went to an in-home after-school care program that my sister was going to for preschool. And I remember the woman who ran it did really well financially. She was really happy, and I loved it. And I thought, why aren't there more of these? And I started doing research, and I kept meeting a lot of individuals who we're running these programs, but weren't running them with the right sort of business operations experience and background. And that led me to start a childcare program. So
Wow.
so we rented a home, we hired a teacher, and we started a childcare program in the Berkeley Hills. And I learned everything about starting in-home childcare programs. And then thereafter, we found 3 other individuals to start programs out of their own homes. And now we have, over 800 programs in 9 different markets in the United States. We're expanding pretty rapidly. And that's how I got here today.
Wow, that's incredible. And I do know, because I have a dear friend in San Francisco, that childcare there is a huge issue.
It's very hard. It's very
So
hard.
you really went into a market that was ready for you.
Yeah, it's been really exciting.
So I have to know, how did you come up with Wonder School? I love the name of your company. That is like a beautiful name.
So the story of the name Wonder School, what's interesting is when we started the company, we thought we would be like a nanny share matchmaking service. That was the first idea. And then we realized that wasn't, nanny shares are primarily for wealthy individuals. That's not something that most people can afford. And we wanted to build something that every child could get access to. And so we didn't even come up with a name for that. We just came up with that idea. And then we're like, maybe we could build a Yelp for childcare. And we were like, competing with Yelp is going to be kind of hard. Let's not do that. And then we're like, maybe we can take on like an Airbnb approach and help people start and operate the programs. And when we came up with that idea, we were sort of fascinated with the idea of Montessori preschool because it just seemed like it was really popular. It still is. Parents love it. And it just seemed like the de facto thing to go with to start programs. So we actually named the company One Preschool. And it was going to be, all the schools were going to be Montessori programs, and they were all going to be the same. And then we started recruiting teachers. And when we were recruiting teachers, we realized that finding Montessori teachers is actually pretty hard. And again, if we wanted if we wanted to build something that everyone had access to, we couldn't limit ourselves to just one sort of pedagogy. The other thing we learned is that we kept meeting very incredible teachers who wanted to do their own pedagogy. They wanted to run a Waldorf program, or they wanted to run a Spanish immersion Waldorf program, or they wanted a play-based program. And we kept thinking, why limit the potential of our providers? Like, why don't we empower them to do what they've always wanted to do? Why don't we, and get out of their way? The market's gonna dictate, what people are interested in. And I have some stories there too. And so we decided to go with the approach where we empowered folks to start any type of program they wanted to start, aligned with our quality safety promise that's like our standard. And when we were coming up with names, we're like, all right, well, One Preschool is not going to work anymore because they're not all the same. They're all different. And we worked with one of our investors, First Round Capital. They have a woman there named Ariel Jackson, who is an incredible marketer. And she brought our team in, and we went through a naming exercise. It's really like as simple as that. We went through a naming exercise. Yeah. And we came up with all of these names. And the name that I was most excited about was schoolhouse.com. And the folks my co-founder, our first employee, they didn't like that name. They liked Wonder School, and there was this other name that we had that was more popular amongst us. And I went to go buy schoolhouse.com, and I emailed the broker about it, and the broker was like, yeah, it's available. And so we talked. I was like, yeah, let's go with Schoolhouse. We're starting these in-home programs. And I went to email the broker again a week later, and he's like, hey, someone bought it. A company in New York just
Whoa.
bought the schoolhouse.com. And I think the broker like figured out that he could use my interest to get a
Yep.
deal done.
Move it on, move it on. Right?
Exactly. And so schoolhouse.com was purchased. And so we're like, you know what? Like, let's go with Wonder School. And so we went with Wonder School. And I think about a week later, I was like, I'm really happy schoolhouse.com was purchased because Wonder School is such a better name.
It's such a good name. And you know now, because Wonder's one of my words, that since the book Wonder came out, that the domains have like there was, I don't
Really?
remember the name. Oh yeah. Yeah. The word wonder and play in certain combinations are worth thousands now.
Oh, I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
Yes, you got in before the
Yeah.
stampede. Yeah.
What I like about it too is it's broad, you know? So now we work with childcare centers, we have nannies on our platform. And it's something we want every child to have access to. Wonder. It's exciting. Yeah.
It's so exciting. So, one of the things I want to ask you is, you know, everyone in our industry knows, right, that childcare, preschool, early childhood, and I think it's not just the US, but you and I, we experience in the US, we're underappreciated, we're underpaid, we're in this broken system. And really, if you look at, like you said, there's not enough high quality childcare available out there.
Yeah, fact.
And so I just want to hear some of your feelings about our industry, that we are not really appreciated for, like you said, your own life, you know, was dramatically impacted by that early experience. We are so important. And yet even trying to get a decent living out of it is a challenge. So I'd love to have some of your thoughts.
So I can just tell a couple of stories. So one of the things we quickly realized is that and I will say this, women, because everyone we work, like all of our providers, maybe except for one person is a guy. Everyone we work with are women. They are incredible individuals and they care so much about the children and the families that they serve. But what we kept noticing is the business acumen wasn't provided in the education a lot of women we were meeting. So
exactly,
they got like the business coaching wasn't there. The other thing that I believe is that anyone can learn anything. So if I can teach, anyone can learn anything. So anytime I meet a provider, I'm like, oh, I can teach them how to run this business incredibly well. And one of our values is have a growth mindset. And that's aligned with the value of having a growth mindset. And so one of the things we did is we tested it early on with a lot of our early providers. We helped them understand how much their services are worth in the area. And what we would do is we look at what other programs are charging. So we'll call Verizon's and say, hey, Bright Horizons, how much is childcare in your area? How much are you charging for childcare? Are you full? And they're like, yeah, we charge $2,500 and we have, 1,000, like 100-person wait list. And I'm like, okay. So I go to the provider. I'm like, you worked at Bright Horizons, right? And she's like, yes. I'm like, well, you can charge $2,500. Honestly, you could potentially charge more because there's more demand than there is supply of those spots. And so we sit down with the provider and you're like, okay, let's put $2,500 on your website. You're like, oh, that's so mean. There's a lot of uncomfort around that.
Absolutely.
But that's the market rate. And it's not bad. It's just how economics works, right? And so what we were able to do is we were able to support the providers in charging that amount. But I think what's really important, okay, and then what happens is parents come and they tour, and when they tour the program, they want to negotiate the price down. And they'll negotiate it down as far as they can go because that's sort of normal too. That's what they're taught in business. In the business world, you want to get the best deal for your organization. So when you're a parent, you're trying to get the best deal for your family. And And if the provider doesn't stand up for themselves, they're going to get pushed. They're going to get pushed around. And so what ends up happening is they end up charging a lower rate. But the unfortunate thing is everyone loses, because then they charge $2,000. They get enough students enrolled, but they realize that they can't hire assistant teachers and they can't pay their rent. And then they start losing money at $2,000, even though it's seemingly high. And then the school closes and everyone loses. And that's actually something we see in the market a ton. And so one of the things we really spend a lot of time doing is building the capacity of our providers and teaching them best practices so that they can support themselves, and teaching them just pretty, normal economics when it comes to being an administrator of your program. And we find that this goes a really long way.
I love that, because it is absolutely, I think, as a whole, early childhood educators by nature are giving, nurturing, we're committed to young children, we're not hard asses, by nature.
Totally.
And so we, I know it's taken a lot for me to develop that. So I think that's really important. And the other thing you said, and I'm curious, this whole growth mindset, right? Like that to me is huge. How has that shown up in your organization inside of the pandemic? And what have you seen, or how has your organization talked to your providers to help them through this time? Because this is, definitely a bump.
Yeah, I think it goes really far when someone tells you they believe you can do something you've never done before. And so a number of people in the organization have stepped into new roles. We have folks who were early childhood educators leading marketing. They'd never done marketing before, and they're learning everything about marketing. We have folks who were doing coaching our providers, leading customer support, never done customer support. Because our teams had to get really lean during this time, because there's so little parent demand for childcare right now because of shelter in place, rightfully so. And so we haven't been able to we've had to downsize our team, unfortunately, and folks have had to step into roles they've never stepped in before. And so internally, that's how our team is, exuding the idea of having a growth mindset. Our providers, oh man, the level of ingenuity and change we're seeing with them is incredible. They've all had to adapt their business to the new health and safety practices that are required to operating a program. They've had to make decisions about whether they were going to retain their staff, whether they were going to have to lay off their staff. Large percentage of them worked really hard to retain their staff, and they've been able to. They've had to apply for loans before from the federal government, applying for PPP loans. They've had to make decisions around, whether to accept new children or not. They have some have their parents living with them, so they have to just be mindful of. They have to be really nimble, and their childcare program is their livelihood. So this is how they feed their families, how they support themselves, and so they've had to make a lot of decisions. And one of the things we do at Wonder Schools, we've built a community. So we have a community of hundreds of providers that communicate with each other on a daily basis. And it feels a little bit like a swarm of bees, how they all move together.
Yes.
That's sort of what they're doing, where they're like a new thing happens and they all adjust and move together to solve.
Oh my gosh,
problems.
it's such a good image. Yeah. Totally is what
and
happens.
it's been exciting to see them adapt to this.
Yeah, and I was thinking as you were talking exactly that you're providing, what a gift in this, that they have this community that's in the same place, navigating the same waters. So, we're better together. And I found that in so many communities, coming together has been so important to share ideas. Absolutely. How are we going to social distance, or are you social distancing? And can the parents enter? Can they, all those things? How do we work it so that we're keeping the needs of the children at the highest level possible.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, so good. The next thing I want to ask you about is that um, looking at, have you had some of the providers reopen or stay open? And have you captured any golden nuggets, like whether in their mindset, like you talked about, and I think it's true, the being able to be nimble, to make that pivot, to be innovative, resilient. Anything in that for you that you would share, like even a story, a golden nugget of how to
So
pivot?
one thing a lot of the providers did, and I think providers are doing this all over the country, is they immediately switched to distance learning, even for like 2-year-olds, right? 3-year-olds.
Yeah.
They were doing distance circle time. They were using Zoom to communicate with the children in their school and bring parents into the fold. So that was one thing. I know that some providers were driving around the community, dropping off lesson plans, so children could, stay busy and stay connected to the provider while they were away. A number of them adjusted their tuition rates and had to figure out how to negotiate with parents to come up with a fair price so that they could continue to pay their staff and pay themselves through this, while also recognizing that the parents weren't getting, fully what they paid for.
Right.
And every provider and every school sort of generated their own system, is sort of what we noticed. So those are some of the things. Those are some of the things that come to mind that I saw providers do and that they're continuing to do today. And then in terms of closing and opening, is very regional. So in New York, especially during the height of COVID, like a month ago, all of New York, or the vast majority of programs in New York, were closed. Whereas I've always noticed that in certain markets where there's less density and people drive around, programs remained open. Also depending on the types of parents that were enrolled. So if parents worked at hospitals or were essential employees or are essential employees, those programs remained open. And so, a lot of our providers were, you could argue, are on the front lines, supporting our communities so that our communities could remain open. And it's not like COVID's gone away in the United States. They're continuing to take on these risks and make these decisions on a daily basis so that our cities and our communities are able to continue to operate. So it's incredible. So it's in terms of being open and closing, it just depends on the region, and depends on the types of parents that were enrolled in the program.
Yeah, it makes total sense. And I love what you said before about what the providers were doing. That what I heard was they were really staying connected to the children in any way they could, right? Like
Absolutely.
Just to keep that, relationship
Yep.
active and alive. And that's so important. And then the other thing I heard that I think is like the silver lining, if there is one in this, is the relationship with the families. Like at no other time has there been an opportunity to really be in full communication on the level we could be during this, lockdown, being sheltered. So that's
Absolutely
huge. It's huge.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. So, going into some of your expertise, again, just the genius of creating this business and your success. So what can operators of daycare, preschools, and other early childhood, programs do to grow their operations? Most aren't marketers, right? Like, and we know there's these basic marketing building blocks that you need to, like, I know in my business that I use to expand and grow. Do you have any words of wisdom for program owners out there?
So one thing we've noticed, I think that's a great question, Sally. One thing we've noticed is most programs have like a childcare management tool so that they can manage the parents that are enrolled in their program. And pre-COVID, most programs really haven't had to do a lot of marketing because parents just always found them. But what's happening in America right now is parents are leaving cities. They're moving to suburbs. They're moving to more rural areas. I call it like the great reshuffling. There's people moving into cities. And who knows what the world's going to look like in terms of where people live in the next 18 months. And so marketing your program is of the most importance right now because parents are leaving your program and you need to fill your seats. And this is something that's happening across the world. It's not, and this is not like a US thing. This is not like a high income market thing. This is all over the world. People are moving. And one of the things that we've focused on as a company from day one is helping providers keep their programs full and constantly get new enrollments because there's so much natural turnover in a program because children can typically stay in a program for 10 months to 2 years. So Wonder School is actually pretty well positioned right now to support providers. And one of the things that we teach providers is building your own website is actually pretty important. It's really important. But building a website that allows for parents to engage with you in an automated fashion. So school tours, message you directly, get all of the information they need, apply electronically is pretty important right now.
Wow, that I can see it. I mean, light bulb moment. Yes, right?
Totally. And another thing I've noticed is a lot of providers, they manage their wait list on a piece of paper. They put it in their drawer when you call. It's really important to manage your wait list electronically because parents are often looking for childcare 6 to 12 months prior to when they actually need it because they've all heard horror stories about how hard it is to find it. So putting them on an electronic wait list is also really important. That's one thing we preach. The other thing that's a really big thing that we promote at Wonder School is parents are searching for childcare in unique ways, all in a very local way. So in Berkeley, for example, there's this thing called Berkeley Parents Network. It's like the place every parent goes to find childcare. If you're not on Berkeley Parents Network, you're missing out on so many opportunities to connect with parents that are looking for childcare. Yelp, another great place to be listed. One of the things we do with our providers, we make sure they're listed in all of the right places. They have reviews from parents that have been in their program, so parents are able to see reviews about their program. And then when they're interested, they can go to your website where they're able to engage with you electronically and add their name to the wait list. And if you do that, that's one of the key ways to keeping your program full and continuing to grow your program. There's one other thing that's really important that I'd like to share. Parents, rightfully so, because of shelter in place, feel very uncomfortable, touring 10 programs before they pick one. That was a norm before. It's really hard now.
Right. Wow.
So one of the things you want to focus on is Zoom. We're using Zoom right now. So a lot of our providers are doing Zoom tours and parents are booking Zoom tours. They're doing Zoom open houses. And they're recording their location via with their iPhone, putting up videos on YouTube, and parents are able to not schedule tours, but do a tour of the program on YouTube and then choose to engage with the provider. Doing things like this are key to adapting to a post-COVID world and it's also the benefit of the provider to not engage with that many parents until they know that the parent's ready to enroll. And And so a lot of stuff is happening a lot more digitally right now.
Wow, that is, again, I never would have thought of that, but it makes so much sense. And you can completely share your environment on Zoom, right? They can meet
Yes.
you and they can see your comfort. One thing I was thinking about as you were talking that I'm really curious about as well is, how do you support your providers in giving parents confidence in choosing their center? Because again, I know many educators struggle with really assuring the parents that yes, this is a place where your child will be taken care of, will grow and learn, and especially if we're play-based, like, 3 years old, where's the worksheet, where's the, why are they not in little desk, with they need to be lined up,
Why aren't they doing trigonometry?
Right. We need to start young so they get it. So, if again, we're really nurturing people as a whole, sometimes it can, be hard to really articulate the power of what we do. Do you have any tidbits on that? Because I think that's a really crucial point, getting the parent trust.
So it goes back to the story I told about the name of the company, From One Preschool to Wonder School. We recognize that highlighting the diversity of our platform led to better matches. So are you a play-based provider who grew up in Bali, who really believes in nutritional food? Don't hide that. Highlight it. Show photos of it. Like, talk about your passion. Who you don't realize that's what parents are looking for. And so, are you from Russia and have studied Montessori pedagogy your whole career and are obsessed with Montessori? Highlight it. Create a Russian immersion program. Play into your unique abilities and put it all over the page. Put portions of your story in Russian so that Russian parents are able to find you and engage with you. So that's one of the key things that we do. We want people to tap into the things that they sort of maybe hide, maybe think is a little wonky or wacky, and bring it out onto your page. And then, make sure you put up photos that are beautiful. So we connect a lot of our providers with a company we work with all over the country to take beautiful photos of your space, of your home, of your family, of you. Get those on the site. Writing more is better than writing less is another thing.
Interesting.
Parents read it all. They're making a huge decision, And so if you're verbose and want to talk about your love for XYZ, write it out. People will read it and they'll love you for it. And the other good thing is some people won't like you for it. And that's great. That's fine. Because that means they're not going to tour your program. That means you're not going to deal with them going forward. And you only can have 6 to 12 children in the program anyway. It's not like, because these are all in-home programs, right? So it's a little bit more like dating than it is like mass marketing. You're trying to find 6 to 12 families that are right for you. And so you want to highlight yourself. And that's one of the things we really push our providers to do. And then the other benefit of that is all of our pages, this is like the technical business side of me. All of our pages rank really well on Google. We spend a lot of time focusing on SEO. So the more content you write, the easier it is for people to find you. So if you write if you're from Bali and you focus on nutritional foods, and someone types in nutritional foods childcare or something along those lines, you're likely going to pop up, and you'll get a lot more interest if you write more about yourself. And then the last thing I'll say is getting parent reviews is super important. Parents really trust other parents. Get parent reviews on Google My Business, get them on Yelp, get them on your Wonder School page, and don't stop. Get as many as you can, because it helps parents understand who you are, and it helps them make a better decision about what makes sense for them.
Oh my gosh, this was gold. Gold. You know, because what's so interesting about what you said that I think is just like truth, like even in my own marketing, you know, if I'm not repelling some part of the population, I'm
Exactly.
being too broad.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to be pulling in people who won't like the work I do.
Totally.
You know, well, they'll be like, fairy dust is not my thing, you know, give me my
Great.
money back.
Sure, exactly. It's like, it's not for you.
It's not for you. So you really do want to hone in on who you are,
Yes.
and you know, express your, you know, even that goofy part of you. You're the teacher that dress ups and, you know, crazy hats and, you know, whatever it is. So then they know who they have. And that's really powerful. And like you said, if it turns someone off, you want to have them know who you are.
Yeah, exactly. You did great.
Yeah. That's
now
like,
you know.
Now you know, right. But in reality, most, like you said, and I think it's so true, is that parents want to know who they're handing their child to.
Yes.
So the more you say, the more of your story you share.
Yes.
The more they feel like, okay, I know who this is. I know her journey. I know how she ended up, or he ended up in education, et cetera. I think it's even translatable to school, or, you know, a bigger program that, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
First day of school, hand your story to the parents.
Yeah. I actually absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. Yes.
Yeah, that's genius, because I think, you know, again, I think about my own children. I really don't know much about any of those teachers they had. I had 3 children, except those who I got to know and learn about them. But it's amazing how much we don't tell about ourselves, because we're all focused on the children, right?
And it's a little tricky because, you know, I work in a world where everyone's an entrepreneur, and I'm an entrepreneur. But I can only imagine, you know, if you're different and you're in a community where everyone is similar, or at least appears to be similar, and you have a job at a school, or you work at a job, you kind of want to fit in. You know, you wanna play by the rules. But it's so different when you're starting your own company, on your own brand.
Totally.
You want to stand out. You want to be different. And again, people, you'll build better connections if you tap into that.
Yeah. And so I'm again curious, all these good tips here, any tips about communicating with parents? Because again, I think that, and I think you were kind of alluded to it earlier too, is that I think education is kind of a consumer driven thing here. You know, parents are buying spots for their children in early childhood. They're paying for that care. It's not given to them. And so, you know, how we communicate is an important part of that trust factor. And I just wonder if you have any again, good tips on that.
Well, there's certain things that parents trust, rightfully so. And there's areas where providers typically need to grow to align with that trust. I'll give you a couple of examples.
Okay.
Cleanliness. You know, I'm not a clean person. My desk is a mess. My apartment, to my partner's, you know, detriment, isn't the cleanliest place. But I'm not running a childcare program out of my home. If I was,
right,
you know, it'd be a lot cleaner. I wouldn't let parents walk into the program with their shoes on. This is pre-COVID, right?
Right.
I would wash my hands and have like parents and children constantly washing their hands. I would showing that you are a clean person, that you value health and safety, that you're mindful of it and you're educated on it are very, very, very important, not only to market your program, but to operate your program. And that's somewhere where I constantly see providers having to grow. And that's something I'm constantly having to coach providers on. And what's tricky about cleanliness is we don't realize how dirty we are, I guess. You know, like we don't, sometimes getting a second opinion is usually valuable.
Nice.
And so another one of our values at Wonder School is seek and provide feedback. And every time a parent tours a program, we ask them for their feedback and we share it with the provider. And one of the things we want to know is, does the parent think the program is clean or not? And ideally, the provider is getting the feedback from parents, and they're able to adjust, have a growth mindset, and improve their program, make it cleaner. So that's one example. I mean, like hygiene. I remember one of our providers. She's a quote unquote a hippie. I don't know if that's a good term to use, but I think that's how I would describe her. And she never really valued deodorant. She didn't really think highly of it. People were saying that the program didn't smell good. And I gave her the tough feedback that, hey, I've noticed it as well. And I think it's gonna hurt your business. And she thanked me profusely.
I was going to say, that's huge. I mean, that is like having a best friend in the back pocket telling you, your best friend tells you, hey, there's stuff in your teeth,
Exactly. It's like I didn't mind it because I wanted to respect her. But when I started to hear that feedback from parents and started to share it with her,
it's impacting your business.
It's impacting your business.
Bottom line.
Exactly. And the next tour, she was dressed up, she had on deodorant, she smelled great, and she thanked me for it. And I would say that's the primary thing that I would focus on.
Yeah, that's great. I think that, again, another thing what's coming to mind to me is that to walk into your own classroom or program with the mindset of a parent. Like if you were looking would you choose your own program for your child? Honestly, take away, in my own practice early on, was an artist first. So I collect trash and bits and pieces, which we call now it's called loose parts. So it has a pretty name, but I had so much clutter and it impacts the space.
Absolutely.
Even though it's valuable clutter, if I didn't have somewhere to put it. So, it took me a couple years to get over hoarding. It's like, it's impacting how people view my space. Those things are important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And at the end of the day, it's your decision, right? So you can choose to keep your space the way you want to, but I think understanding the trade-offs is really important.
Yeah. And again, I didn't give up my hoarding. I just found a place where it was appropriate. My garage,
Exactly.
It's not going to have a car anymore. Sorry.
Absolutely.
It's all for the bits and pieces. That's what goes there. But, it's like, again, seeing life with that growth mindset, which I just love, gives you the opportunity to go, okay, if not this, then what is possible?
Yes.
If this is impacting how people view my program or my classroom, what is possible? And even I remember another classroom I got had horrific rugs from the 70s, in the ground, orange and okra and that, I don't know what that green was called, awful green. And I went into negotiations with the system and it took, 18 months. They replaced it. Like, anything's possible.
Totally. Absolutely.
Yeah. And it makes a huge difference. I love this. to begin to wrap this up, are there any other areas of concerns around the business of early childhood education that I should ask you about? Like, you know, your passion. Oh, and I wanted to say this. I just love that you are about passion in the classroom, because to me, that is I think the most trustworthy factor of teachers. A teacher who is passionate, like you said, a parent is looking for that. So as a passionate business owner, which you clearly are, you know, I can hear it in you. What else are your big passions or concerns that you want to give voice to?
You know, one thing I spend a lot of time thinking, I think because of the Black Lives Matter movement, it's been really sort of, I think, beautiful that we're having so many conversations about race and inequity in the world. And I'm really passionate about that. That's one of the big underlying principles of Wonder School. I benefited pretty heavily from diversity in my life. I went to my elementary school, my middle school, my high school, where I went to university, my preschools. They've all been very diverse. And, you know, I experienced, like in high school, my best friends were Jewish, from Pakistan, from Jamaica. My one friend who is Asian, he's Chinese Jamaican. You know, my one Indian friend is from Trinidad. Like the level of diversity is just like next level growing up in Miami. And what that allowed for me to do is understand cultures in a very like innate, passive way. You just knew when you know, like your friends don't celebrate Christmas and they're unavailable for a week in December. And I actually didn't really know what my friends were celebrating. I just knew to respect their culture, and they would be able to hang out afterwards. I knew when to wear shoes and when not to wear shoes in someone's home. I knew to, you know, whenever someone put food on the table, you eat it. You don't reject anyone's culture or anyone's food, you know, like, and I found that to be pretty instrumental in my life. And when I think about what we're doing at Wonder School, I'm really passionate about breaking down, you know, walls related to systemic racism. Really passionate around giving children and individuals access to diversity. And it's something I think a lot about. And I think starting young is like the best way to do it. You know, I remember my sister, we were driving home from elementary school, and she mentioned that one of her friends was white. And I remember being so upset. I was like, why are you labeling people? Like why, you know, I was like third grade. I was like, why am I doing that? But I just wanted sort of everyone to be the same, even though we all know that things don't play out that way. Like, it was just like it's something that's always been sort of core for me. And when I think about Wonder School, I think that we have a pretty strong opportunity to enable that. We're connecting a lot of different races, a lot of different socioeconomic backgrounds, you know, and we can do that with the providers, we can do that with the parents, we can do that with the children. And, you know, I applied to Penn because, I'll tell you another story. I went to a high school that was made to desegregate the area in Miami. So I was supposed to go to an all-Black high school. There's an all-white high school and there's an all-Hispanic high school. And my high school was made to desegregate the area. And so it was effectively like split right down the middle. And through that, I was hanging out with one of my friends. Her mom was a graduate of the University of Pennsylvania, and she knew I loved business. And I was hanging out at her house, and she's like, "Hey, you should apply to Penn, like, if you love business." And And I was like, oh, okay. Like, she believes in me. I don't know anything about Penn. No one in my family's ever gone to college. I'm going to give it a shot and apply to the best business school in the world and, try out for an Ivy League school. And I went and I got in. And I think that's like the power of diversity, right? Like,
yeah,
by me being exposed to other cultures, I benefited pretty heavily, but so many of my friends benefited heavily in getting to know me at a young age, getting to know my parents at a young age, understanding what it's like to go into a Black home, what it's like to go into a Honduran home, and I think that that's really important. And these aren't like the things that are taught in school, but I think they're so important. And so that's something I spend a lot of time thinking about and, really want to enable with Wonder School.
I love that. Yeah, and it fits exactly with, the growth mindset. I know myself really standing in, looking at what I don't know that I don't know, that is white supremacy moving through my unconscious self because I'm embedded in it. Like, I think the Black Lives Movement has given us an opportunity this time to really dismantle it, and it's incredible to look at what's possible, as you said, in the early childhood classroom, that we can make that impact now.
It's huge. It's really huge. And we can do it just by exposure. Just exposure goes a long way. And so I'm like doing a good amount of research, looking for things to read, looking for people to talk to understand how to apply these principles to Wonder School. But I know I lived it. And so yeah, it's really interesting to me.
Me too. And I think that is the call of the moment, is for, every educator committed to anti-racism to take action, to research, to look, and, to do self-reflection, to reflect on how, our culture is, where there is, again, what we have to dismantle and rebuild, which I think is also not just police, but education. It's not, the model we currently have doesn't serve our children at the highest level. So great. I love that. Have loved talking to you and hearing about Wonder School. Where can people go and find out more about you and Wonder School?
Yeah, so all you need to do is go to wonderschool.com. If you're a parent looking for childcare, you can go to wonderschool.com. If you're an individual looking to start a childcare program, we're also starting to expand into micro schools. So we have folks starting micro schools on our platform. And then if you have a childcare program, we're starting to work with childcare centers. So in-home or centers or forest schools. You can go to wonderschool.com and we can support you in utilizing our technology.
Yeah, and again, that sense of community that you bring to, individuals becoming an entrepreneur and an educator, it's huge. It's huge.
It's really exciting.
We'll put the link below for people so it's easy peasy to get over and take a look.
Cool.
Thank you so much. This has been amazing.
Sally, thank you so much.